sometimes out of our control. Change is sometimes out of our control, as we all know now. Sometimes we can't stop the change from happening. The transitioning part of it is something that we can control. That we can take advantage of into groups of people that have been through the fire as we've been through the fire. So these settings are so incredible in so many ways because we can look at each other right now, even on a screen. We could come together with never having seen each other before, and we have that magnetism that we can pull together, and we can hold our hands and walk down that path together. Whether you're a step ahead of me or a step behind me, our hands will still reach out and touch, if that makes sense. That's kind of the story of Jonathan and me. I got into writing, and I am not here to push my books. I wrote my most recent book, Digest of the Broken Road Traveler. It was my first book where I ventured away from grief support. The other 6 books that I wrote were just solely grief support. I wrote Digest of the Broken Road Traveler, realizing that I had faced some of the toughest hardships, not just with the loss of my son, as incredible as that is, but I mean, through divorces, unwanted divorces, through career changes, just things that what you and I are going through, you might think those things pale in comparison, but there's people that haven't been through the trauma that we've been through that are going through those things that think it's the worst thing in the world that could happen to them. Everybody deserves a little help. And in such, I did, and as she alluded to, I call there's 4 points in the book, and they're each a waypoint. And there are or chapters in each of those waypoints. And a third waypoint was revelations of hardships. Okay, the others they're different chapters. They have to do with moving through life and moving through those hardships and how to get off the broken road for a minute, take that rest stop, go see the world's biggest ball of yarn, all that. Just take a break. As she spoke of here earlier, that pause that you need to take. And I wrote about this in a chapter that even the most beautiful piece of work, of musical work, Beethoven, Bach, you name it, would be just mindless noise without that pause, if that makes sense to everybody. So take your pauses. That was an amazing point that I'd like to re-stress now. As you go through this tough time, make sure you're taking your pauses. But in Revelations of Hardship, I did speak about grief quite a bit in that chapter or that waypoint. And it's not a cop-out. I hope you don't feel it that way. I've been here a couple of times, but there's a couple of chapters that I think if I read, again, it's not a cop-out. I want to read these to you. And as I read them, listen to these chapters. I know I wrote it. I know it sounds like I'm being pig-headed, but these are the things that I glommed onto that kind of helped me when the bottom dropped out. It kind of helped me understand where I landed and who I was going to be again, if that makes sense. So without further ado, and I apologize, I will put on the reading glasses, and they may reflect in the camera just a bit. But I'm going to start with a chapter that I called No Deed Without Purpose. And please, I hope I don't bore you. These to me, are very good chapters, but I am a little biased. Okay. Again, no deed without purpose. A purposeless man was asked to clean a boat. He had just experienced the death of his dear wife. But in his deep despondency, felt the urge to stay busy. Running the only marine cleaning service in his seaside village, he was called upon by a local resident who was expecting a visit from his adult children. Although his boat was lightly damaged and dirty, his kin would surely expect an outing on the water. The purposeless man arrived at the dock outside the man's home to find him nowhere about, but the boat already lifted from the water. So he settled into his task at hand. Starting on the deck and cabin areas, it took several hours before he began working on the outside. As he made his way underneath the craft, the purposeless man noticed some damage, as well as a hole that went all the way through the hull. Having the proper materials available in his bag, he easily plugged the hole and repaired the blemishes before completing his cleaning job. When unable to find the owner around the property, the purposeless man simply shrugged and walked away, The man could find him later and pay or not. It really didn't matter. The job had no other purpose than to keep him from thinking about his loss and pain. 3 days later, the boat owner came to the shop of the purposeless man and presented him with a big check. Actually, it was a great deal more money than what would have been expected for such a job. The purposeless man was surprised and said, "Sir, this is way more than I normally charge for this boat," the man replied. "I owe you so much more. You repaired the hole." "Oh," the purposeless man answered, "but in truth it was such a simple repair, and making more money from you was not my purpose." "Not your purpose," the boat owner came back. "You don't understand. You were to clean my boat, yes, but the next day the hull repairman was to come by as well. He did not. My children unexpectedly did, and I, on the other hand, was not at home." "Did they take the boat out?" the purposeless man asked. The boat owner took a deep breath and answered, "Yes, they took the boat out. And when I came home and saw their luggage there, but the boat gone, I was beside myself with dread and panic. I surely thought they had gone to their death. Imagine my joy and relief when I saw them safely return to the dock." The purposeless man then said, "You must have been relieved." "Indeed," the man came back. "It was then that I examined the boat and found that you had repaired the hull. It is true that I did not hire you for that purpose, my friend, but you saved my children, and for that I could never pay enough to have witnessed the true purpose in your life." And one of the reasons that I wrote that is I had the opportunity to meet a man in his home who had lost his wife. He was 78 and looked at me and he said, "I have no purpose any longer." There's always purpose. Life has a purpose. No matter what your beliefs, no matter what your support system, no matter where you find yourself, there is always a purpose for you being here. Sometimes it takes a little more than just sitting and pondering to discover what that purpose might be. And when we get to the Q&As, maybe somebody might share a similar experience where they thought, maybe there's no purpose to my life. I was the father of one child. I had been a United States Marine. I had been a police officer. I had been a federal agent. I gave that all up on purpose. I did not purposely give up being a father. But when John was gone, there were times I wondered about my purpose. Was I even a father anymore? I am today the father of Jonathan Taylor Kelly, and my life has purpose. We will all have purpose again, peace and purpose. It will be there. It might seem like it's a struggle and it might seem like it's far away, but we will have purpose again. I'm going to move on to another chapter that I think might have some meaning for us here, if you'll continue to allow me to read. This one is not sort of that fable sort of thing. This one is also from the same waypoint, but it talks about what we need to do. And it's called Be Prepared to Work for It. It is easy for society to get wrapped up in the concept of grief being related only to the passing of a loved one. Keep in mind, I'm writing this not just for us this time. I'm writing it for quite a few people out there. In fact, when someone or something deeply cherished, be that a person, a thing, a concept, or even a lifestyle, is taken against your will, you will grieve. Aside from death, grief can come from such happenings as an unwanted divorce or separation, being fired from a job, being the victim of a crime, or even a major diagnosis of ill health. Put another way, if you're forced to redraw the blueprints of your life without that which you once filled your future plans with, you hurt inside. With that loss, you're left with unfulfilled comfort, security, and hopes for life yet to come. And only moments ago, it all seemed so right, didn't it? Then your future was suddenly ripped away. That hurts. And now you must face the pain and acknowledge that it's perfectly acceptable and absolutely necessary to grieve. Like it or not, you must now redraw the blueprints of your future. But it's not easy. In fact, it's hard work. Actually, the clinical term grief work was first coined in 1944 by a psychiatrist named Eric Lindemann. In his groundbreaking grief work model, he rationally laid out all the difficult tasks that must be performed and accomplished to healthfully move forward after a traumatic, life-changing event. See, grief work requires true exertions of both physical and mental effort. It can sometimes seem no less strenuous than digging a ditch or solving an almost unsolvable problem. Yes, if a loved one has passed, you will certainly grieve for them. But in all instances of loss, whether person, job, or lifestyle, you grieve for yourself. And that's the really tough part. Make no mistake, grief work must be actively performed to ease your hurting heart. And it takes so much more than just sitting back and expecting your pains to fade away. It's more than just saying, I'll be all right. It means you must perform mental tasks and purposely exercise specific courses of action in order to progress forward. It all sounds so intense, doesn't it? Well, it is. But in doing your grief work over time, you will release your more intense and debilitating emotions. The caution, however, is that it is not a light switch. Traumatic emotional pain cannot just be turned off. It's work that will truly take time and effort. But if you earnestly set yourself to the job, you will begin to experience your life in a healthier mental and physical state. Is there a one-size-fits-all toolbox for grief work? No. You and your life's hardships are far too unique. But it begins with acknowledging and facing your pain and not deeply shoving it back inside. After that, you'll recognize your tools as they come before you. In truth, you may never fully stop grief's heartache, but with purposeful effort, the pain will no longer interfere with your daily thoughts or dictate how you live your life. Just be prepared to work for it. Now, I hope that was kind of a long chapter, probably the longest one that I will read to you folks, but I think it says so much in itself. We sit back thinking, what do I have to do to move forward? And sometimes it's almost a job. We have to do purposeful things. We have to make sure that we're doing things like this. So many times at so many grief conferences, I've heard people say, I'm just standing still. Well, no, you're not. You're here on the screen in front of me today. Tonight, you're here. You're not just moving. You're not just standing still. You're moving forward, whether you realize it or not. So just make sure when we talk about what we have to do to move forward, and all of us want to move forward, we have a purpose in life. Remember from the first chapter that I led, and we have to move forward. And again, I hope if anybody finds something in that chapter, we'll talk about it in the Q&As. Anything that I write in my book, anything that anybody writes in their book, and I think I talked about this the last time that I was here with, don't just assume that it's gospel. Don't just assume that it's the right thing. When you're in grief support, all the grief support that I've gone through, I've held to those things that resonated to me. If I sat in a conference room full of 70 people and there was one person at the dais and that person had things that they were expounding to others, if it didn't fit me, I didn't walk out of the room with that thought going through my mind. And hopefully anything that I put out here, if it's the be prepared to work for it, if that doesn't fit you right now, you're on your own time and plane. There is no stage to this. There is no phases. There is no place that you should be at this moment. That's all unique to you. And I hope everyone understands that. Okay. The last two chapters, I'd like to really just hit at you, talk about yourself. And even though that's in the it's in the waypoint of revelations of hardship. To me, these helped me move through my pains more than anything else. Just the thought of this. You're in a group here, and I don't want you to think that I am disparaging being in a group. My gosh, groups got me through so much. I actually sat on the board of Bereaved Parents of the USA and Alive Alone, and I was on the board of a number of things, Children's Hospital on advisory board. I need groups to get me through, but what it all comes down to is me and how I move through. So as I read this chapter to you, I want you to think about that. Okay. This is be the one that you turn to. Do you need someone to turn to in troubled times? Never forget that the best person for this is very often you. That's right. No one can give you better advice. Listen, everyone has that mentor or two in life who always seems to have the perfect answers. But are they always there? At 3 a.m., when despondency fills your thoughts and you just need a kind, positive word, you're pretty much on your own. Who knows you better than you? Even before this most recent heartache or hardship, you've surely been through other trying times. Maybe not as difficult, but trying times. And with each passing trauma, you're the one who learned what it took to stand back up and climb the mountain again. Even if that knowledge initially came from another wise soul, you're the one who opened yourself to learn. You were the one taking notes and then taking positive action to move forward. Maybe you don't feel like you can be there for yourself. Stop for a moment and recall times in the past when a troubled friend came to you for help. Can you remember a point when midway through your words of support, you realized that the wisdom you were offering could apply to some troublesome problem of your own? Further, it's likely you might also think back and realize that you were giving sound advice to someone else. It seemed like you were on autopilot. You didn't have to think about putting your thoughts together before the words just flowed from your mouth. Just where does your good guidance come from? It's certainly not coming from your conscious mind, especially when you're the one going through the hardship. Because right now, that mind is anxious, afraid, and maybe even filled with anger and noisy static. See, it's rapidly moving between thoughts, like when you frantically spin the radio dial in search of a song, any song that'll make you feel good. Don't turn to your mind in times of trouble. Instead, turn to and listen to yourself. Call it gut, if you will. Go with your gut, it's often said. And there's much truth to that. See, your gut may be wrong from time to time, but with all confidence, know that your gut will never, ever lie to you. None of this means that you shouldn't turn to other mentors and trusted guides in your life. There can be many harbors in a stormy voyage. But remember, you are a very wise soul. You're experienced. You've been through the fire before, haven't you? Maybe nowhere near as bad as this, but of great importance. You are always available for you. You can certainly be the one that you turn to. And again, I hope that resonates with some of you here to realize that you've been through troubled times, you've helped out others, and would you actually listen to your own advice? And with that, I'm going to transition to another chapter called Caring for You. One day, you answer a knock at your front door and come face to face with you standing on your front porch. You see a handwritten note attached to the shirt that simply reads, "This is yourself," or you for short. "Please raise and care for this blessed soul. Thank you." What would you do? You are now fully responsible for taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
Well, you'd absolutely do all you could to give yourself everything needed to be well. That's what you do for someone you care for, right? Someone you deeply love. You go above and beyond and give them all the very best you can. So to begin with, you feed yourself only good, nutritious foods. You make sure you stays healthy. That means making doctor's appointments and getting yourself to every one of the visits. If medicine were needed, you'd rush right out to the pharmacy and pick up used prescriptions and always make darn sure that you took them exactly as ordered by the doctor. You'd absolutely nurture yourself with loving guidance and morals. You'd challenge and reward yourself. You'd set goals. You'd make sure you fit well in society, and you would do all you could to make sure you can make it in a sometimes difficult world. Certainly, you love yourself, right? In raising you, there's nothing you wouldn't do or sacrifice out of love. Do you really do that for the true you now? Give that some thought. We have lost a loved one, and there is a unfair balance there where my 16-year-old, my heart breaks for what he didn't experience. I grieve for the fact that, he was, and not that he was a 16-year-old golfer. He golfed. He couldn't do contact sports because of his half a heart. When they rebuilt it, they made him function off his two right chambers only. So his oxygen sats weren't what they should have been. So contact sports were out. So he became a golfer and a darn good one. He was 16 years old. He was the first freshman to ever make the high school golf team. Doesn't mean there weren't other things I was looking forward to: marriage, grandchildren, the whole bit. My heart grieves for what he didn't go through. But I allowed myself to grieve for me. I had that future I wanted in my blueprints. I was going to be a granddad. I was going to spoil my grandkids. I was going to let my son bury me. Those were my blueprints. I had to rewrite them. And I did that with the help of some very loving people. I did that with the help of support groups like this that are just absolutely amazing. But you have to let yourself hurt for you. Don't be ashamed to realize, yes, I hurt for him or her that I lost, that they're missing so much, but I'm missing too. I'm missing a life that I expected, and I'm not going to get it. And I am going to use that pain and that hurt. It'll always be with me. If I ever lost the grief if I ever lost the pain and the grief that I feel for the loss of Jonathan, I'd be a monster. It'll always hurt, but guess what? It will never dictate my life again. It will never take up my entire day's worth of thoughts. I will move forward, and I move forward with John in my life every day. I lost my mom and dad way too young for them, way too soon for me. I am still the son of Donald and Barbara Kelly. Nothing's ever going to take that away. They left. I always said I could turn out to be a serial killer. Mom would just pat me on the head and said nobody understood me. But they left a relatively good child, I think. And I walked away with a lot of their characteristics, and I'm a better person for it. I was blessed to have Jonathan in my life for 16 years. If I could do it again, and we're told that there was only going to be 16 years, and I was told the day that he would go, I would do it all again. I had 16 years of that amazing child change my life. I don't know if I said it before when I was on here, but yeah, I was a jarhead. I was a cop. I was a federal agent. I was an ego-bound SOB. And you said I can't cuss, so I'm not going to. But my life was all about ego at one point until that child came into my life and the doctor said he might not make it through the night. Hurts. But that fire turned me into somebody who was willing to get on a microphone tonight and shed a tear in front of you and feel good about it, knowing that others are crying too, knowing that others are one day going to be, whether you like it or not. I was talking with Jane before we even started here. There will be a day that unfortunately somebody else will lose somebody, your neighbor, somebody at work, and they will turn to you looking for some kind of guidance because they know that you've been through it before. And whether you know it or not, I will tell you right now, you will reach out your hand and you will offer them guidance. It's not a gift that we get from our lost loved ones. It's a, I don't know what to call it. It's precious. I'd rather have John back, but it's a precious gift to me. So, I hope that I haven't taken up too much time by reading my stories, Jane. I have more if you'd like me to go on. I don't
Well,
want to take up their time in a group.
I think quite often there's one or two people that would like to have a question or make a
Oh, gosh.
comment. So I'm just wondering, at 7:40 now, maybe for the next 5 minutes, we can take some questions or comments, and then we can get into our breakout rooms.
I would love to. I would love to.
And so
I know
I'm
you
just
got to turn it. You got to turn the camera, the recording off, though, right?
I'm just going to stop the recording now.